Good day, brothers and sisters, and thank you for tuning in once again to Alex Sasho here at the Glen Zone with Glenn Herring. And today is, per usual request, we couldn't get enough of this guy, and he's coming back almost every podcast now because we love him. And we love him for a reason, because, great minds think alike, and, we need more than one head when we approach this multi-headed beast here in this world that's attacking us from all the directions. James Bradley, all the way from California, and Rome here, the man from Chateauguay. The story is that we're covering is impressive, and I was waiting for 3 months to do the story, and we're actually very concerned because this story is about a U.S. journalist, and this U.S. journalist has been missing. And he's been missing after attempt to flee Ukraine. He posted a video, which we'll play for you shortly, that he was okay and that he was escaping Ukraine on his bike into Hungary. And he chose Hungary because he thought that's the only refuge he can seek in Europe. And he was afraid to cross over into Russia because of all the mines and, war action on the front lines and all that stuff. But I'm speaking of Gonzalo Lira, of course. And if you guys don't know who Gonzalo Lira is, Glenn will tell you in a second. But he's a Chilean-American reporter who claimed he would attempt to flee Ukraine after being subjected to physical abuse and extortion in custody. In custody, he was in jail for 3 months in Ukraine. You know what for? For democracy, of course. For freedom of speech, and that's not a laughing matter because we are concerned for his well-being, and he is missing. And we talk about this and a lot more things that are happening in Ukraine and in the world of democracy, specifically Western democracy. We'll see you shortly after this break. So welcome, brothers and sisters, back to Alex Sasho, and here I'm sharing court with 4 gentlemen who are gentlemen, and there's a man in the word gentle. There's the reason why they're gentle, because there's also a beast within them. Don't mess with those guys, and they will protect every single one of you and every one of your women and your children, and that's why they're the beast. But they're men first. Guys, how you been?
Good. All is well.
Well, before we get to Gonzalo Lira's story, because I've been waiting for this for 3 months. I was genuinely concerned, guys. Meta, and I've been noticing that my Instagram, posting was delayed, and I couldn't post certain things. And I was trying to tag Rome into the show we did a few days ago, and I posted it actually today. And Rome, I know you didn't see it yet because Meta didn't let me tag you in it. And I think the reason why I think that is happening is because Meta starts blocking news in Canada. James, I mean, right off the bat, do you know what this is about? This is actually Bill C-18 that they put out, right? Is that Bill C-18? Or one of them was C? Yeah, I think that's a Bill C-18. Now that the Canadian news outlets have to pay, or not actually any world news outlets have to pay, Meta has to pay Canadian news outlets if that content is posted. So Meta start blocking those news outlets. And we know why it's done. It's a control of information, control of flow. But James, you ever heard of anything like this, Nazi going on anywhere in the North America or in any democratic nations of the West specifically?
Yeah, I think I have, actually. California's in the center of it. Silicon Valley, of course, that's where a lot of this is hosted.
But you see, what a government is doing is what the American government and other other Western governments did during pandemic when, they were, and it's been exposed through Facebook files and Twitter files where, government insisted on blocking information that wasn't serving its purpose, right? It wasn't serving the agenda of the captors, so to speak. And we see continuation of that in Canada, where things seem to be lighting up a little bit, with like people like Elon Musk buying Twitter and everything else. But in Canada, we're doubling down on being Nazis, specifically for Justin Trudeau. But, we have some talk about Justin Trudeau. And he officially came out of closet, and we'll cover it in the next show. By coming out of closet, his wife officially separated from him, which we knew for many years that's been happening. But now he's been to way too many Pride weekends and parades, and I think this is the next thing is going to come out, that I'm a gay Canadian thing. That's what he's going to say. That's my thing. But okay, let's. So from now on, brothers and sisters, if you want to know the news, just tune in to Alex's show at the Glen Zone, and we'll keep you up to date, because you won't be able to catch it on your Facebook and Instagrams and Twitters, because it's going to be blocked. And the same thing for YouTube as well. And hopefully we are not going to be blocked, because we're really good at what we're doing. We're entertainment and not a news outlet. So the story, let's jump to the story. So this is the U.S. journalist. Well, it's at least a journalist. Glenn, but you didn't meet, you weren't introduced to Gonzalo Lira as a journalist, right?
No, I started watching some of his online content when he was embarking on the red pilling process of Western relationships, women and men, and how come we're not getting along. And he was quite adamant and forthright on the way he was saying certain things, which turned a lot of people off. So he was labeled a misogynist for that. But, that's like a shock jock. That's a way to get more and more notoriety and more viewers. So he was really good at marketing himself and moving himself upward in the fame game. And but he met a lovely lady in Ukraine, and he decided to leave the Western culture for greener pastures, or shall I say, a place where a lot of the women seem to be still quite feminized.
Well, unless they're being surrogated, right? Whatever it is. Impregnated for purposes that we'll discuss later. Actually, we discussed in the previous show, and we do touch on the subject of sex trafficking and surrogate factories in Ukraine, which is a never-ending project. And James, we're very thankful that you can share your thoughts on that. But let's watch Gonzalo Lira's story really quickly right here. It's amazing.
Sent to a prison labor camp. And because of events that happened in prison where I was extorted for a sizable amount of money, I will be sent to a prison labor camp come my court date. That's inevitable. Okay? And there won't be any suspended sentence, and there won't be any mercy, all because of my YouTube videos. I mean, I want to emphasize this, In the indictment, if you read it, you will see that the prosecutor himself says that I committed no crime against any person or property, and that my crimes are literally speech crimes, saying things that the government doesn't like. Ukraine is supposed to be this big democracy that it wants to join the European Union and because it has European values. European democratic values. What higher value does a democracy have than free speech? My case is all about free speech. And I spent, 2 months and change in a maximum security prison. And by the way, when I say, okay, well, let me finish that point. I spent 2 months and change.
So here's the point, brothers and sisters. I know, James, you probably don't know much about this story, because I kind of throw it in your lap without giving you heads up what we're going to cover it. But I did this intentionally because, you being in the heart of this, all we hear here in the West, specifically in Canada and the US, that, we are, our resources, our army, our monies, our taxpayer money, industrial military complex isn't there, is to protect the values, the Western values, democratic values. And what I didn't play here, what he said, which was really funny, he said, if I was some transgender junkie basketball player, I probably would have got out already. But I wasn't. And that's his words, it's not mine. But I agree with him as well. James, can you comment what US is still doing in Ukraine other than sex trafficking? Like the same way, I believe, like the same way U.S. was protecting poppy fields and heroin trade in Afghanistan, it's doing something as disgusting as that. Beside the resources that they're going to reap from the Ukraine, but also, IMF it with all kinds of, rebuilding of the country and everything else. I think sex trafficking is a big part of that. What democracy are we talking about that we're protecting in Ukraine? Tell me.
We're not actually. We're just money laundering.
Mm.
That's what my whistleblower came up. Wanted to go state's evidence and expose it all. It was 10% went to the military effort. 90% went to the pockets of the many U.S. organizations that are direct ties to Act Blue, and that's a funding mechanism of the Democrat Party. So we still to this day, we have whistleblowers coming out and trying to expose the crime, but we have our own Ministry of Truth here in the United States, and it's happening as we speak here. There's no democracy. There's no First Amendment.
How do you feel about it? Because ordinary citizens don't really see that. And it's a funny thing here that I've experienced here among my peers or even my friends, acquaintances, etc. A lot of my acquaintances did not buy into COVID thing, but they bought into Ukraine thing. Like this is just the next thing, just like the captors. Glenn, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, in America, for example, things that are going on and people have no idea, or it's mysteriously behind the curtain all of a sudden, especially when it comes to the mainstream media. But we hear that Trump just got indicted again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the day after Congress nails the Bidens for taking money from other countries. And it's been going on for a long time, not just while he's been the so-called resident of the White House, but even when he was the vice president under Obama. So, that is a big thing. But when it comes out, crickets. You don't hear anything. But Trump now the next day, now we got to do that to divert everybody's attention, or to the people who even had the attention of knowing what was going on with the Biden administration. So this is another cat and mouse game, or shell game, as we like to call it, playing in real time. And these are truths that are being eroded. So if you don't even have the right to free speech, how are you going to find the truth to anything?
Rome?
Yep.
Well, free speech has been penalized since the beginning of time. Even when the right was there, you got the right to say, but you got to deal with the consequences that come with it. People that have practiced free speech, their graveyards are filled with them.
James, I was just reading today what happened in Western Canada, in the city of Calgary. There was a guy who was admiring the Pride painting on the roadway. And an older gentleman came by, and they got into a little bit of a verbal spat. And, of course, the older guy, who didn't like anything to do with that, started calling him names, like homosexual names and queer and this and that. But they wanted to charge him for expressing his views or his opinion. But they realized they couldn't charge him because he was walking away, and the guy who felt offended was the one who was walking towards him. So that's how he was able to get out of it. Can you imagine free speech dictated by which way you're walking?
Well,
Tell that to the J6ers.
Yeah, well, that's a subject in itself. My thing with this is like, always remember, brothers and sisters, and I urge the panel to remember this as well. Even Constitution is a man-made document. That you have alienable rights, that are God-given rights, and the freedom under those rights is not even bound by Constitution. It's above your First Amendment. So First Amendment, so when we talk, it's my constitutional right. No, that's your human right. You're free to choose as you will. That's why we love all the brothers and sisters who choose to do otherwise than what we like them to do. Because I can't control what you do. This is by design. This is your choice. I'm hoping to share that, my love and my knowledge and my understanding of this universe, how it works, and how can we all benefit from that. The greater good, the true greater good, not the greater good that they're pushing us. But not to digress from the stories, I think, Glenn, you're absolutely right. It is the distraction from the usual suspects, Hunter Biden story. And we get to it in a second. I'm just going to run through the things that we know are frustrating, and they are frustrating to American government as well, because U.S. is physically frustrated with Zelensky, and it's according to the mainstream sources, CNBC, okay, legacy sources. And Glenn, you're absolutely right. If that stuff is out there, that is 100% distraction. If they're putting this on the legacy sources, then we are being distracted from what really is going on. I know Gonzalo Lira's story maybe possibly is a distraction as well, and some people say he's a controlled opposition in this whole case. Why would he disappear? Today is the day he was supposed to cross the border and was supposed to know, and now he disappeared. I don't know if he's getting... He made quite a bit of money, by the way, in Ukraine. He was naming some numbers on his Patreon, just on his Patreon alone, on his account. In the last 2 years, he made 150 grand, just from the people contributing to his efforts in Ukraine. And he didn't spend much money, so he's independently wealthy doing his journalist thing. So there's a lot of questions about that, but there are no questions about. And Glenn, I ask you that question, and let me ask the panel. What do you think is going to happen with Zelensky? Because even here, we have the story with the now Ukrainian government. Ukrainian government has a plan to, they call it a secret plan. Obviously, it's not that secret anymore. If we're talking about here on Alex Sass show, there's a secret plan to replace Zelensky, or what to do if he's killed. And Glenn.
That was just like his secret plan for the great offensive against the Russian lines. Remember, that was secret for a month, and it's so stupid. Well, I always said that he's just playing his part, and then he's just going to go away. I think in one of the last podcasts, I said he'll just fade away into the sunset, and where he won't be recognized. So he'll probably transgender into something else. I don't know, a frog or something. And life will go on, and we'll see what happens in the new Ukraine. But I also believe that the east part of Ukraine will be annexed completely. There'll be a demilitarized zone. And then the west part of Ukraine, more the Nazi side, will be assimilated with the new Europe. There's this push for the United Nations to want potentially to cause a war with Russia, with all the European countries. I will tell you now, Russian military will take them all, and they will win. But we will all lose. Okay, it's an unnecessary war. But if something like that happens, it is part of the machine, the mechanisms to bring down the world population, of course.
And that's what we talk about here all the time, is a great reset. And White House, Glenn, I'm glad you brought up the counteroffensive, because we knew there was just a more fear-mongering on the side of the West, and to fear-monger, actually, specifically, not Russians. Russians not afraid anymore. They've been through this for how many ages now, but it's to fearmonger and to attack its own populations, Europe and North America, intentionally, specifically. And also we have things like Australia and New Zealand, and I'm calling things for a reason, because I don't think they are countries at all, but they're colonies. But now we have the White House admits the concern of a slow Ukrainian counteroffensive, and we covered this before. And again, it's Glenn, you're absolutely right. They're bringing this up for a reason, because there is no progress. And what Gonzalo Lira said, by the way, guys, Gonzalo Lira said that, yes, they already annexed the eastern part of Ukraine because of the resources and the Russian population there and the ongoing conflict that's been there for the past 10 years. But also they're going to go to places like Odessa, which is the last seaport for Ukraine. And basically they're going to separate Ukraine from the sea trade as well. So they're aiming to completely block off, that is, landlock the Ukraine, which will make its economic value way less for any kind of IMF investors in the future. So it is an economic war, but again, it's the people who are suffering, not just immediately people in Ukraine and Russia. James, actually, in California, is there, like, here we used to see all those Ukrainian flags and people get really vocal about whatever's going on. You would hear it on the radio all the time, or in the news. But it's a lot less and less and less of it. Like, it's fading out. You hear a lot more about climate change and the economic problems and transgender stuff, but you rarely hear about Ukraine. How's it in California?
It's the same, actually. It was the hot topic of the day. Could go down a neighborhood and you see the Ukrainian flags throughout the entire streets. And this is predominantly Los Angeles. You go in the same neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Climate boiling.
So what is people, you don't hear Ukraine stuff at all? It's dead, right?
Rarely these days. Yes, rarely.
Why do you think is that? Do you think we are ready to move on to the Taiwan thing, or we're just really just focusing on this whole Trump, Hunter, Biden thing? Because maybe the reason, like, okay, I have a theory. Maybe the reason why they're not bringing up Ukraine thing because they have to talk about Hunter Biden and the whole Joe Biden thing. Yeah,
exactly.
No, James nailed it right on.
Distraction.
Yeah, James nailed it right on when he said that, no, it's just a big money laundering operation over there. That's why they know they can't win, but they want it to go on longer so they can launder more money and influence and enrich the pockets of, a few elites at the expense of many people. It's a U.S. taxpayer dollars. When they don't have enough money from the taxes coming in, which is been the modus operandi for 50 years now, then they just go to the printing press and it creates inflation. So inflation basically is a hidden tax, more specifically on the middle class. The poor are used to getting by with very little, but it's the middle class whose their lifestyle gets impacted the most. The uber rich, like a guy complains, this year I only made 146 million. 2 years ago I made 186 million. So it's a rough year for him.
Interesting. That's a good point. And you're right, like you said, they made like $17 million a day, right? Since the beginning of the...
Since the beginning of the year, the top 500 wealthiest people in the world on average made $17 million US per day as this whole parade keeps going on. The real parade, not the pride parades, the real parade.
So we see this happening everywhere. That Ukraine-Poland thing is also. It's not just between It's not just U.S. is disappointed with Ukrainian counteroffensive efforts and Zelensky running around begging for money, which they're gladly to give them because they can get it back through back channels and they reinvest into their own pockets or re-election efforts, etc. But also Ukraine-Poland thing, like Poland was really, really hot on helping Ukraine in different ways, ideologically, financially, military, and they wanted some of the Ukraine Western lands and Belarus Western lands until the Belarus and Russia made some kind of agreement, and they put all kinds of nukes in Belarus and as well as the Wagner groups, another army. And just recently, in a few hours, they encroached onto the airspace of Poland and by the way, this is all a theater because now Poland is sees ambassador summit between Ukraine and Poland. So they get into political arguments now. But again, it's they cover in the ends because they're understanding the next conflict is already upon them, and for which White House is actually asking for more ammunition for Ukraine specifically. But Biden wants arms and cash for Taiwan for budget for Ukraine. So they don't even deny it. They're like, okay, yes, we have a fiscal instrument in place, which we promised to give to Ukrainians, but that's all lost. Let's set our eye on the next conflict, which is Taiwan, and for which is a military-industrial complex. It's very happy to hear that because they're like, oh, the gravy train isn't running out yet. James, you are a military man. Um, this war, I know war is not necessary at all for us to exist, but it seems like U.S. has been in conflict ever since. Since I don't know, since World War II, the conflicts haven't really stopped.
Since its birth.
Right, since its birth, really. Is it a necessary part of Americas to maintain the world conflict? And I think it's not just Americas. I'm not throwing rocks at neighbors in U.S. We love the United States. We want them to invade Canada 100%. But I'm interested in what the military has to say here, and men like yourself about that.
What you're meaning is the globalists using the American military machine to do their nefarious
yes,
bad deeds
yes.
all around the world. It's not the American people. They're
Yes.
good people. They stand for rights and freedoms, and they hate watching the atrocities that are happening around the world. But this, James, what do you think about the potentiality of this new thing with Taipei and Taiwan?
Well, again, of course, the official position of the United States is they don't recognize them as an interdependent entity, but they are supplying munitions as well as doing joint military exercises. So the question is, why are they diverting the money and the munitions that way? It's probably take the heat off of Ukraine for one. Yeah, because right now in the news cycle and the White House stating they're not happy with the progress or lack of progress for Zelensky. So they're going to change the narrative and move it. Very tactical. Yeah, with the military industrial complex in place, that's the profit centers. And it's using our tax dollars to fuel the profit centers at human cost. So sorry for the delay, but
No, it's all good.
try to get the message out to you.
But do you think and that's what I brought up in the beginning of the show, like the whole sex trafficking and child trafficking thing. We can cover it nonstop. Every single show could be on that. There's so much information coming out now, and it truly is the most precedent thing that we can cover right now. But I think the things that we're covering here specifically right now is Ukraine issue, and we're not really covering the Ukraine issue. We're just covering the thing that what is next. Because we know the Ukraine thing was just a straight up, like you said, money laundering operation. What is next? And how will it affect us? And if we're not here to see for what it is now, they are playing chess with us. And when you play chess, you calculate 10 moves ahead from 10 different positions, and your opponent's positions and your positions as well. Like, what is the next move? Yeah, Glenn, what's up?
James, I wonder how the U.S. government would feel if China was starting to feed arms, weapons, and money to Puerto Rico to have them succeed away from America. I wonder how the U.S. government would treat that.
It's a very good question. The question have they already? Because they seem to be very socialist in Puerto Rico. So I'm not sure what's going on, and I haven't touched a base with my guys in the NSA and the military complex, especially in Pentagon. But I will definitely find out what's going on in Puerto Rico. But yeah, it'd be really shocking to see China be a bigger part of Puerto Rico. But I can see it's very similar to Cuba.
Well, it's a vassal state, right? They're not even a state. Puerto Rico's not even a state. What are they? Territory?
Unofficial.
Territory, yeah.
Territory. They don't have any Senate or House representatives or anything like this. So it's just basically a colony. It's still run as a colony, and that's something we don't want to talk about. We talk about Russian-Ukrainian relationships and how the Russia enslaving everybody around them, and they want to expand the empire, Soviet empire, etc. Meanwhile, we have this all over the place happening, including here in U.S. I have some Puerto Rican friends that always mention about dissatisfactory issue with that. Like, then we're not a state and we're not independent. What are we? Like, it makes no sense. But that's the state of the world today. And yes, brothers and sisters, we urge you to remember that your rights are alienable rights. And we're just going to finish really close, like this Russian, grain or Ukrainian grain deal that the Russia canceled, and we covered it last week. I mean, they canceled it over different things, but at the same time, Russia is the smart, the most sanctioned country, but they're making some business decisions in this. Russia is the biggest grain seller right now in the world. So why would they want to revive the grain deal? They're like, screw you, you sanction all of our businesses, and this is the thing that we can sell that's not falling under sanctions. Why would we revive Ukrainian deal? And but who will suffer from that is not the countries. Well, we are suffering in a way with all the pricing gouging going on here, but who's suffering are countries in Africa, right? And the ones that rely on this grain more than anyone. And we also see the BRICS, making these attempts into expansion. And, in Africa, I still believe Africa is, and I'm sure we'll close with this. What role will Africa has to play in the next 50 to 100 years in the world? Because it's obviously now it's becoming a beast, because now they're starting to reject all the colonialism and all the influences of countries like France, for example, and England and everybody else who've been, instrumental in destroying the continent for many, many years, if not centuries. And now it seems like they're regaining true independence. Even China recognizes that, and China wants to step in there. So is Russia, by the way. So all those countries still try to gain the relationship there, the strong foothold, thinking that the power may move into Africa in the next 100 years and become populated and the strongest economy. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Africa is with all its untapped resources. China and Russia are jumping in there to build resources when you had the previous empires going in there with their imperialistic ways and just robbing from the people, putting governments in power that were not really democratically elected. It was all lied to. The same things we have going on in North America right now, Canada and United States, where the outcomes of the elections are not really real. But this has been going on in many countries for a long time. But the people in Africa have had enough, and they don't want to be ruled or colonialized, as you said. They want to run their own show, and it looks like they're being given the olive branch from the emerging economies of the world, the new power brokers, and they're going to, let's say, transition to a healthier trade partnership with these countries, where the actual people in Africa will also benefit from these new trade routes. You had Niger. There's a takeover in Niger. It's the military junta who overthrew the government because they realize what's going on. And so they've taken over the power in the country. Now the West is threatening these military juntas with their own military. In other words, forced. And the other countries like Burkina Faso and Mali are warning that if they do that, then those countries will get involved in a physical confrontation also against the West. So there's a big push and a movement towards, let's say, going to the East, which is also going to be part of the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South African new trade system, new currency system. They have the equivalent of the World Bank and the IMF already set up, and they're going to be dictating trade amongst each other, circumventing the US dollar and the SWIFT payment system. And by the way, the United States, well, the Anglo-American Empire, I should say, was using this as a weapon, one of the weapons, not just a military, but a financial weapon against countries that didn't fall in line. And just today we read that Fitch, the credit rating agency, has just downgraded America's AAA rating. So America's debt payments are going to increase exponentially. So it's going to be even more percentage of their GDP, which is going to help to sink them even more, unfortunately.
Rome, you have something to add regarding Africa?
Oh,
that's me being racist.
That's okay. Your racism is welcomed. Believe Africa was always a world power, a power in the world, and anybody that wanted to establish a powerful dominance over the world needed to have a foothold in Africa. If you look throughout history, it has always been so. And just like Glenn said, we're welcoming the day where Africans are taking over their own continent. Just a fun fact, us right now, if we visit Africa, as soon as we get there, our passport is good to travel all over. Within the continent of Africa, an African holding a passport of a certain country needs a visa to go travel through his own continent. You know what I mean? So that just shows you it's time for, quote unquote, a revolution and like to break free of all these rules that obviously come from either France, Belgium, England, or whoever had power over the continent. So, they're breaking into this new world at their own pace, and it should be a beautiful thing.
It's funny that you said that Canadians now, without a visa, can travel anywhere in Africa.
Once you get there, yeah.
And yet, soon, starting like next year, or even a little bit sooner, but let's say 2024, Canadians who want to travel around Europe, a lot of the countries in Europe are going to require Canadians to have a visa.
Well, they already had that, I think, with Czech Republic. But Rome, you're bringing up a good point that the same thing happens with all East, Asia and even Eastern European countries, specifically like Russian. And I know people that hold dual passports for that purpose. And question not to the panel, but to all of my brothers and sisters, all of you watching this, and some of you who don't watch this, which human decides that these people cannot go enjoy beach in Florida, or those people cannot go see Mount Kilimanjaro, or those people cannot go to the island in Asia because they have a different passport, they speak another language and all this stuff for political reasons. And, we have countries like extreme examples like North Korea and Canada during pandemic, where you couldn't go in and out of your own province, let alone your own home. You had a curfew. So, like, you are a captive, you are a slave, because you have to stay in that house that you can't leave. And God forbid you don't pay taxes on that house, and then you become homeless slave. So this is something we're going to continue to bring up at this show, that your freedom, in the reason why we spoke about Gonzalo Lira today, it's not just about your freedom of speech, it's about your freedom of choice, it's about your freedom in general. And I'm very happy to share this hour with four gentlemen such as yourself, Glenn, Rome, and James from California, all the way. Thank you for being that man. Thank you for continuing to bring freedom to the forefront. Thank you to be a freedom fighter. And to all of you brothers and sisters, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.